Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion, and I'm Bill Stone. Well, tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we may have some live stream call-ins. It kind of depends. I'll mention a little bit the 2020 Republican National Convention. I will talk about how Civil War II has finally, in fact, begun. I will give you some usual weekly virus statistics from my neck of the woods, and I got a little bit of Star Trek news about Lower Decks, because another one of those episodes came out today, and a little bit of something about Star Trek Discovery that's kind of interesting. And we may also have, depending on how things go and what things look like, some live coverage of protests, riots, and stuff going on around the United States. Now, this is a live stream, so even if we're not able to get together in Skype, you may feel free to talk to me about anything that you want in the chat. You can ask me any question, political, social, the virus whose name that I can't mention without YouTube ranking my videos and channel even lower than it already does, the U.S. Civil War II, or even things pertaining to science fiction, fantasy, horror, and other related genres. I'm happy to answer each and every question in as much detail and as truthfully as I can. There are some personal subjects that I won't get into, but other than that, anything at all is fair game. I will get to as many of my viewers as I can with the understanding that unless something really weird happens with the protesting, I don't want to go on any longer than about 3 hours with this, because it tends to kind of take it out of this whole body. If you'd like to call into the show, and today I'm not going to promise to get to you because of other things going on, but if you'd like to try to call in, you can do it with Skype. I don't really want to give out my Skype information in public, so I'd rather handle it this way. If you want to talk to me live on the air, you can send me an email at callin@sylranch.tv. If you give me your Skype information, I will Skype you. And then you're free to talk with me about anything that you want. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me, don't care. In fact, disagreeing with me is sometimes good. But again, if you're interested in talking with me directly, send me an email at callin@sylranch.tv and give me your Skype information. I'll call you back. That email address again is callin@sylranch.tv. Well, it looks like I've got about 3 concurrent here going, so that's good. Yay for you. You should also feel very lucky. This time I have some very nice, that I have my very good high-end laptop here, because I got the GPU. It's humming along like crazy because I have so many potential windows to throw up tonight. It's kind of astonishing. I've got a whole bunch of different live streams from different live places on the going on around the country. I may throw those up depending on how things go. You may also hear in the background I'm keeping sort of an ear to the ground when it comes to the when it comes to what's going on with the police frequencies and stuff. I've got Kenosha's sitting on me right now, so could be that pops up or something else pops up, but we'll see. In terms of something immediate to talk about, oh God, the Republican National Convention. I have very little to say about the Republican National Convention for one very specific reason. I'm not really watching it. I'm a libertarian. What goes on with the Republican National Convention is largely a question of sort of puerile interest. It isn't anything that affects me directly. Although I have to say about it, the main thing that I can do really is compare it to last week's Democratic National Convention. If you saw last week's live stream, you know that my main reaction to the Democratic National Convention was that as a former actor, because a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor, and as a former actor, I felt embarrassed for the performers. It was bad all the way around. It was, as somebody who'd been a performer, it was like this for me, because I was just like, God, I feel really bad for these people. I feel bad for you. It wasn't so bad it's good. It was just bad, and I felt bad for the performers. It was just embarrassing. I felt embarrassed for them, and you never want to feel that. Republican National Convention seems to be about the opposite of that. It has good production standards. It's well directed. It's well acted. That's really the only thing I can think of these people as actors. Because ultimately that's kind of what they're doing, is acting. It seems much, much better produced program. And I'm, again, not really watching it except occasionally because as a libertarian, I don't much care what goes on in these dog and pony shows. I mean, as long as they're not, like last week, just cringe-inducingly embarrassing for the performers. I consider the thing's just a big giant photo op more than anything else. Most years it's just a lot of screaming and carrying on, and it's just like, yeah, who cares? But every once in a while, it's when you get something like this where it's more or less online, basically what I can do is talk about it as a production. It's a good production. Nothing else going on with that. I think they got some good speakers up there, a couple of whom were kind of, flashy to show given what's going on now and how we do, in fact, have a new civil war on our hands. But aside from that, I really don't have a whole hell of a lot to say about the Republican National Convention. It's just a convention. It certainly seems to have a lot more energy in general. I think the Trump voters have a lot more energy in general than do the ones for Biden. I continue to say that I think that this is ultimately going to be a win for Trump, and it may very well be that it's a complete blowout for him. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Hey, Drop of Truth, how you doing up there today? Or down under? Drop of Truth, one of my regular listeners, is from Australia. Always glad to have you here. He's asking, hey, Bill, how's the second Civil War where I'm at? Pretty good. Melbourne, Victoria is as bad as ever. Oh, yeah. Sorry to hear about that. Haven't really heard much in Lincoln. It's been pretty quiet. I live, for people that watching me and maybe don't know, I live in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is geographically near the dead center of United States. It is well into what people mostly consider flyover country. I live in a city of about 340,000, about in a half an hour, 40 minutes away from a city of about 1 million. Most people don't know that such cities exist in Nebraska, but yes, they do. Lincoln had a couple of riots, a couple of 3 months ago, something like that. I don't remember. I went down and I covered one, mostly because I'm stupid. You can see it. It's the title of the video is "Terrorist Attack in Lincoln, Nebraska." It was pretty crazy. Lots of property damage, very unpredictable, which is what all of these mobs are. It's why you really shouldn't go in mobs. They become unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen. Stay away from them, particularly now that we have, I think, what historians will call Civil War II is upon us. Sorry to hear about Melbourne. I don't know what to say. It's reasonably good here. It's crazy what they're doing with as usual, with our virus stuff. Hell, I'll just throw that up just because I can. Drop Truth saying here again, forced lockdown in Melbourne and surrounding areas has only exacerbated the infections. I don't think it's had any impact whatsoever on ours. Let me show you. I'll throw up our statistics here. This is Lancaster County. Let me get to my notes where the information is here so I can read it off to you. Source for this is arcgis.com. I don't know what it is, but they maintain an open dashboard that's nicely interactive. I think I have a link to it in my description box if I don't, I'll put one afterwards. But it's nicely interactive, map showing all of Nebraska. You can zoom in on various counties. And here in Lancaster County, which is home to Lincoln, it catches most of the metro area. The actual metro area is closer to 344,000, but it catches most of it. In Lancaster County, we have had a grand total, our total population, as always, is 319,090, growing every day. Total number of tests we've had in this county is 54,444 as of today, so considerably, considerably less than half of the population. The total positive tests are 3,720. Total number of deaths in Lancaster County remains at 20. It's been like that for weeks. We have not seen any change in our deaths. The deaths as a percentage of those who are tested is at 0.0367%. The deaths as a positive percentage of positive cases is 0.6116%, and death as a percentage of the overall population of Lancaster County is remaining at 0.0062%. We call this nothing. Interestingly enough, I sent him an email off to my mayor, and one of the mayor's flunkies got back to me and said, to my question about why are we doing this? We have no problem here. Why are we doing this? And came back with some nonsensical, oh, well, we've seen an X number of reductions. And I'm like, X number of reductions means nothing, considering the number of real cases that we have. It's irrelevant. And I always like to point out to people who aren't familiar with the area, this is because Nebraska really has no infection vectors. You go to a place like New York City, very, very population dense, has multiple seaports, multiple international airports in the area, lots of tourism, except now, of course, but typically a lot of tourism. And none of the stuff coming in and out internationally is checked for anything. No people are checked for anything. So you have a very wide infection vectors, many, many ways that the thing can get in. Nebraska is landlocked. We have no international airports. We have no international trade. What international trade we have goes in and out through other places. You have to ship the stuff out, if you're going to be international, I suppose, through Denver or maybe Chicago. We do a fair amount of international trade with, agriculture and stuff, but it doesn't go in and out of Nebraska. Our major thoroughfare is Interstate 80. We have no tourism to speak of. So people are just going straight through Interstate 80, pretty much stopping just to get gas. So we do not have any very wide infection vectors. And yet, for some reason, our governor has decided we all need to wear our stupid masks anytime we're not at our house or not in our cars. So I dutifully do it. They have dutifully destroyed our local economy. And it's just general stupidity and insanity with respect to that. There's really no reason for us to do it. And when the mayor's flunky came back to me to tell me all of these wonderful, wonderful statistics about how great it is, I'm like, okay, see, you saw a 50% reduction in nothing. 50% of nothing is still nothing. It's not a problem here. It shouldn't be a problem. Drop of Truth, my friend from Down Under, is saying masks are mandatory throughout all of Victoria, even though the population density is 1/100th of that of Melbourne. Yeah, I think it's a test case for the rest of the westernized world. It certainly could be. Like I say, they're treating us the exact same way as if we were, New York City, and that's stupid. You don't. What you really need to look at is the infection vectors. How can the virus get in? And if there's a lot of infection vectors, then you need to worry more. If there's no infection vectors like we have, then you don't have to worry at all, which is pretty much what's happening. And Dalton Brazier, hi, Massachusetts, you have to wear masks in your own home, and some parts of Florida too. I find that so amusing, because, what are you going to snitch on yourself? You're going to rat out yourself? That's just stupid. I mean, mandating masks in your own home, who's going to know? Who's going to know? You go to the door, put it on, just so nobody rats you out. That says to me more about who's rats, how many rats you have around. And I mean, by rats, I mean snitches. How many of those do you have around? It's to the point where I'm not even necessarily thinking that snitches get stitches is a bad thing when you're talking about this. So, yeah, it's just generally kind of stupid. But I do have quite a lot of activity. I am not going to show it up now because it's confusing and weird, and I'm waiting to see if anything happens. But I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 live streams from various places in the U.S. And I'm keeping tabs on what's going on at other live protests going on around the place here. I think this has got to be an older one. Awesome Tube Gaming. Well, okay, I've got him up. Anyhow, I always say that if you're going to get accurate information about any of this junk, you should not pay attention to the press, because as scrolls past in my lower third, every single one of my episodes, nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. And I don't just mean things that are political or things like this where, the most hysterical thing I've seen in days. A CNN report where, they've got stuff going on in the background that's clearly horrifying. And it says, something about, some word, I've forgotten exactly what the wording is, but it says, mostly peaceful. Fiery, but mostly peaceful. I mean, come on, man. If it's fiery, then it can't possibly be peaceful, can it? But not only is everything you see in the press not real with respect to, and I don't like fake news, by the way. I don't like that term at all. But not only is it nothing you see in the press real with respect to politics, it's just not real with respect to anything. For 40 years now, 40 years, I can't believe it. For 40 years, I have made a masochistic hobby of debunking the press. I can do it with any news story from any news source. In about 30 minutes, I can prove one of three things. Either that the event being reported never happened, that the event being reported didn't happen as it was reported, or that if you strip away all of the slick interface, opinion, emotionally loaded language, and filler, you end up with a story that's maybe a couple of paragraphs long at best. Just nothing you see in the press is real. And it never has been. It never has been. I didn't put a link to it, but I will when I get done here because I love harping on this. Regular viewers know I love harping on this. The press has never been accurate. It's never, ever, ever been accurate. If you look at the turn of the 20th century, the Hearst string of newspapers, and William Randolph Hearst was one of the first big media magnates as we think of them today. He helped or was almost damn near responsible for the United States being involved in the Spanish-American War. Started on false pretenses, largely pushed by the Hearst chain of newspapers. Go back, a little bit after that, and I'll put a link to it. I love. There is the 1931 version of the film The Front Page, which, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, when I was an actor, I got to play a part in. It was a stage play to start with. And it was written by a pair of then contemporaneous Chicago journalists, and it's very much dark humor. But all of the behavior of the reporters that you see in there was drawn from the personal experience of these two guys who wrote the play. And they're not telling the truth. You go back to the American Revolution. Well, the revolutionaries kind of stretched the truth in order to drum up support for the revolution. I'm pretty sure if you go back to the time of the pharaohs in ancient Egypt, you're going to find that these slaves who were carving hieroglyphics that was praising them probably weren't carving bad things about them, were they? I think if you probably go back to the cave paintings on the walls, if you knew who had made those, they were probably doing paintings about the chiefs, and maybe they weren't entirely accurate. So nothing you see in the press is real, nothing. And I always suggest that if you want to get more accurate information, you do like I'm doing. I have some windows down here that, again, I may throw up later, that has a whole bunch of live streams. These are people who are embedded, sitting in the crowds, and just pointing their cameras, and I've got the volumes muted so you don't know what they're saying, and that's good. You want to be able to just point their cameras. The best citizen journalists are the ones who point their cameras, and they shut up. Because you do not need a talking head sitting there telling you exactly what you're seeing. You can figure that out for yourself. You're not stupid. What the talking heads are doing is spinning. They are, giving you propaganda. They are propagandists. That is what, that's why I hate fake news. The term fake news is not good. Propaganda is what they're doing. They are propagandists. So, glance up here at my thing here. Strike the root, Thoreau. Hi, how's it going? Let's see. Trapezer says, city is burning down. Nothing to see here. I expect Leslie Nielsen to show up. Yeah, very much so. That's what CNN was doing, yeah. Strike the root, Thoreau says, we need more Kyles. Well, yes, I have very good things to say about him and some prepared marks that I'm going to do shortly. Strike the Root said, the welfare of humanity is always the alibi of tyrants. Albert Camus. Yep, can't disagree with that. Drop Truth is saying, when Hearst artist Frederick Remington cabled from Cuba in 1897 that, quote, there will be no war, William Randolph Hearst cabled back, you furnish the pictures and I'll furnish the war, which is exactly what happened, yeah. Strike the Roots. Thoreau says, who are you going to believe, the legacy media or your own lying eyes? Yes, the only problem with using your own eyes is that you can't make assumptions. I always like to tell people when I'm looking at this stuff, I'm trying to do what Robert Heinlein talked about in his book, A Stranger in a Strange Land, where he talked about he had a fictional profession called a fair witness, who was someone who would look and observe things, a trained observer who did not make assumptions. So, for example, if you asked a fair witness, what color is that house across the street, they'd say, it's white on this side. They would not assume that the other colors were white. And even if they walked around the house and they see one side's white, back is white, other side's white. They would not assume that the moment they turned their back, that they didn't, the house didn't spontaneously change colors on anything that they weren't looking at. So you always have to look at it from that perspective. And that kid here, Kyle Rittenhouse, I believe his last name was, I'll get it here in a second, but the first videos we saw of him did not give context. People were making assumptions about context before and after. Same thing with the guy who was killed there in Kenosha. They were making assumptions about what went on before and after, thinking that it was just this bunch of cops pulling out their guns and trying to whack this guy, which it wasn't at all. When you found out the context later on, you found out that he had been showing up to grab his kids at the time when he didn't have the visitation. He tried to resist arrest. They had to tase him. That didn't work. Tried resisting arrest some more, and then he got shot. Tell you what, guys, if I tried that as a white man, I'd get shot. His skin color had nothing to do with it. It was his behavior. But people only saw that first bit of footage and did not get the context. When you see videos, you can only judge what you can see at any moment in time. You cannot judge contexts. So even when you're watching, citizen journalists, if you're watching them live, and you just, pop in where something's happening, you can only talk about what you personally are seeing right then and there. You got to go back and see the footage to get the context. And you don't make any assumptions about what's going to happen in the future. You're just, this is what I can see right now in front of me. But what you absolutely do not need is some blown-dried talking head, basically just gibbering on. They're free associating. I'm free associating right now. I'm happy to tell you I am free associating. I'm saying what comes in off the top of my head right at the moment. I do have some prepared remarks that I'll get to in a bit, but this is just me talking about what's coming in on the top of my head. A journalist, when they're doing this live coverage, that's what they're doing. They're talking off the top of their head. The difference is that they are trying to spin. So you don't need them to tell you what you're seeing. You can do that by yourself. You're intelligent enough to do that. So yeah, always trust those guys. Strike the root throw. Who are you going to be on? See, Shadow Man. Hey, hello, Shadow Man. How's it going? I saw Drop a True Sweet. I've seen a number of them today. I haven't been able to keep up in the last hour because I've been too busy. Because of the way your live streaming works, I have to set up all of my... I'll just give you a quick glance at the things that I've been setting up today. This is a quick glance at what I've been setting up. We have a map of Kenosha if we need it. We have a couple of different windows showing, live streams from all over the U.S., but I won't show them all. But I have to set that stuff up right before the stream starts because I don't know for sure what will be coming up until then. So, and it could be that it falls apart completely. So, yep. And like Strike the Root of the Rose says, unfortunately, by the time the full videos are released, the narrative is already set. Yep, exactly. Shadowman says he disagrees. There's a civil war happening. There are sporadic riots happening in places, but you live in California, the biggest state, no riots. I think it's a little different in California. We've talked about that on Twitter, Shadowman. I think the difference is just that when you have your major metro areas there, they're already very, socialist to begin with. You don't have any riots going on there because there's no one to fight. In the rest of the country, you have people who do not believe that. And so therefore it's appropriate to fight. Now, maybe you'll be lucky and the Civil War won't hit you very much, or maybe not. I don't know. Depends how it turns out. So wars never turn out the way that anybody wants. And in this case, I'm pretty sure that it's not going to turn out the way that the communist terrorists who are in charge of it are making out. In fact, I should probably point out that for the most part, and particularly when you get into places like Portland, I'm not seeing it so much as a Black Lives Matter thing. We have lots and lots of protests for Black Lives Matter that are totally peaceful all the time. But under the cover of darkness, that's when white guys between the ages of about 18 to 25 start showing up with their communist flags, and they start causing serious trouble. You're getting into serious communists there, And that's when you get the trouble starting. It is under cover of Black Lives Matter, and I don't think Black Lives Matter, the organization, is very good. If you look at their website, they are clearly communist. But I think most of the people who go to these things, they're trying to be relatively peaceful. My problem is, that when you get into a group like that, like the one that was here in Lincoln that I went to, you don't know what's going to happen. That was frightening to me because I did not know what was going to happen just then. The crowd could have turned any number of different ways, and there would have been no way that you could have done anything about it. Shadow Man says you're black, but also conservative and a gun owner. There are lots more of us than the Democrats want to realize. I think that's probably true. Yeah. I of course didn't know what your skin color was and don't care. But nice to have you watching me in any case. So I can at least say I have one African American who watches me. So. BLM does not represent black people. Yeah, and that's, if you get people who will go in, some of the journalists, and they'll ask people questions. And generally speaking, the black people will go, I don't want any part of what's going on here in Portland right now. This is wrong. But then they get to these 18 to 25-year-old white guys, and they're like, yeah, we're going to tear down the system. That's why we're being violent. We want to use it as a method to rip things down. So, yeah, I'd agree with you there. Drop of Truth says, and the Mary Jane in California, well, see, I don't think it has to do with marijuana. I really don't. I'm a libertarian. I think that, to be honest, I'd love to see all drugs decriminalized. I'm of the mindset, libertarian mindset. It scrolls past always in my lower thirds as well. We live by what we call the zero aggression principle, which states no human being has the right, under any circumstances, to initiate force against another human being, nor to threaten or delegate its initiation. You must keep your mind on the word initiate. That means you started something. Well, when you stick chemicals in your body, you ain't initiating force against anybody. You may be doing something bad for your body, but you haven't done anything to anyone else. So if you want to do that, that's fine. Now you get, wasted and you go driving, that's another story. Your habit gets so bad, you have to go out and rob people at gunpoint. That's another story. But as long as you're just, buying and selling the stuff at, with no coercion involved, the same way you might buy something at a liquor store, that's fine. If you're sticking things into your body that's bad for you, well, if that's all you're doing, from a libertarian perspective, that's fine. Now, on a personal level, if I had a family member who was using heroin, well, they're not initiating force as long as they're not ripping off anybody to get the heroin. But as a family member, I would certainly try very hard to convince them to stop and to go into for therapy. That's a whole other thing. When it comes to how you deal with laws and putting people in jail and stuff like that, I don't know. And I don't think most people in California are particularly stoned. I mean, I'm adjacent to Colorado, and it's legal there as well. And, it's not like Colorado's going around getting stoned all the time. I don't think that really has anything to do with it. I think it has to do with what your majority belief system already is. I look at people like Scott Adams, the creator and illustrator for the Dilbert cartoons. Last time in 2016, he first came out in support of Trump. He got death threats. He was accosted on the street because he's from Southern California, and he eventually had to change to voicing his external support for Hillary. Now, he was going to vote for somebody else, but he had to say, I'm voting for Hillary. He might have been killed. And so I think that's, in Southern California, the coastern Southern California, I think you have this general homogenous thought. Now, I can't say that for sure. I haven't been there since 1991, so I'm not going to try to speak for someplace I haven't been. But that's my general impression from half a continent away. And because of its large population density and stuff, all of that Southern California tends to drive your state politics, sadly. I've always heard rumblings about cutting off the coastal Southern California and the rest of it becoming a new state. I'm not really against that. I think that'd be all right. So, let's see. Drop of Truth says legalization increases improves the quality, reduces the price, and the danger of acquiring it. Absolutely. It's one of the reasons that I'm totally in favor of decriminalizing not just marijuana. 100 years ago, you could send your kid with a note down to the drugstore for morphine. You didn't need to have a prescription. The kid was not abusing the drugs. When it's widely available and you can just buy it across the counter like it's booze, you don't have the crime. That's the biggest problem with it right now is the crime. There's all the gangs that you hear about. Oh, what are they really concentrated on? Well, it's drug dealing. If you could buy it in a store, they would disappear the same way that the gangs of the 1930s disappeared. They had all that violence with Al Capone and stuff because it was illegal. Make it legal again, buy it in a store, boom. It all goes away. In that case, it disappeared and went into gangs that ultimately became the drug gangs that we see today. And Shadowman says the marijuana boutiques here are nice, clean stores. I've only ever been inside one in Colorado, and it was kind of makeshift, but there was nothing wrong with it. It was a perfectly fine place. Shadowman is saying the weed dealers were all nullified in a single day. Yeah, absolutely. And any violence that might go along with that gets disappeared as well. If there's no reason to fight over turf, then you don't have any turf fighting. They'll go on to something else like, I don't know, prostitution or whatever it is that the state, decides to make illegal. But once you get rid of that black market, then there's no crime to go along with it. It's just that simple. Strike the Root the Rose says the smallest minority on earth is the individual. Those who deny individual rights cannot claim to be defenders of minorities. Yeah, absolutely. It's an Ayn Rand quote. I'm not a Randian, but I just stick to the zero aggression principle, and that certainly says so, yeah. Drop of Truth says the protesters in front of St. John's Church chanting, if we don't get it, quote, justice, and parentheses, justice, burn it down, happening now. Is that where you're at? I'm not familiar with St. John's Church. I've got a whole bunch of... I have so many different possible things here that we can look at. I can say I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 3, 20, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. 28 different live streams sitting up here, most of which I would have to say, looking at them, you'd call them relatively peaceful, but they also have lots of cops running around. The one Kenosha is very, very understated at the moment, but considering that they've got all kinds of... it's on Twitter in the USA. Yeah, you're saying, yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. That's where you start to worry, If you just got people with signs, chanting, justice or something like that, justice for Juicy, or whoever they want to say justice for, that's okay. But the problem is those crowds. I'm going to have to sit back a little bit. I'm probably going to end up looking fatter because of it. Those crowds, they can turn. You don't know which direction they're going to go. Mobs are weird things. Having been in that one here in Lincoln, it's a weird thing. You cannot predict what a mob is about to do from moment to moment. It's unpredictable. So when they start chanting stuff like that, you have to worry, And like I say, I'm listening here just to police frequency in my sort of off in the back of my ear of Kenosha, and there's stuff going on there, but the live stream shows it is relatively quiet. I'm hearing stuff that they're having to pick up and do things like that, but it's nothing like the other night, and that's of course because they called for the National Guard. Drop it to Washington, D.C., yeah, and Shadowman's agreeing with strike the root throw. Mobs have their own momentum. Yeah, and you don't know what's going to be. You don't know what it's going to be from moment to moment. You just don't know what it's going to be. It's akin to being in, the only thing I can liken it to is being when I went to see Shania Twain live. I am apparently Shania Twain's sole male, unattached, heterosexual fan. Everybody else I saw there were couples, with no exceptions. But in that, you have a guiding force in the performer. A good performer like Shania Twain knows how to work that crowd and get that crowd feeling good about being there and being, doing things. If she says, "Hey, everybody, hold up your cams and turn on your phone lights. I want to see it," and I was down front, so I got a good picture of that. And it's kind of fun, to see 25,000, 30,000 people with all their phone lights on. But she can guide the crowd. When you have no guiding force, you don't know which way it's going to go. The only guiding force at the riots I went to in Lincoln were the police standing at the building of the entrance to the city-county building, occasionally firing off flashbang grenades and gas. They were the only controls that you had, and that was just solely to keep the crowd, as soon as they started encroaching on the steps of that building, check out the gas and the flash bombs. That's the only control that you have. The rest of the time, who knows what it's going to do? I myself was in danger physically briefly when my cam panned across some guys who were committing property damage, shattering the windows of buildings that were across the street from the city county building, and it just panned across them, getting them. And had I not been able to sort of talk myself out of that really quickly and run, I'm not sure that they wouldn't have turned on me. I have no idea. You have no clue which way they're going to go. Shadow Man says the rioters need to be sterilized. They are doing what they are doing without saying what they want. I think when you get into the ones at Portland these days, they are saying what they want. They want to replace the current government with a communist totalitarian state. I think that's really what they're aiming for. Let's see, looking at Washington, D.C. from ABC News. Yeah, they're out. I know where they're at. There's an intersection in there. Yeah, it's not pretty. And there's some in Washington, also in Washington, D.C., where they're firing off fireworks and stuff. Fortunately, they're not firing them into the crowd. One thing you have to remember when they talk about fireworks for that, I have in my hand an M5000 firecracker. This is legal to sell and own in our neighboring South Dakota. That's where I got it. I've had it for years. I used to live there. I had it longer than I like to remember. But I've had it for years. This sucker, if you set this thing off and you are holding on to it, it'll blow your hand off. You set one of these off and throw it at cops. If it hits their shield, they'll be okay. But if it hits their body, it will seriously injure them. You can put this in the ground and make a very nice crater with it. And that's a legal piece of fireworks. That's not the largest one you can get either. There are bigger ones than that. It's the largest one I know. Strike the Throat says, whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation and must begin by subduing freedom of speech. And that's the other thing about them. They equate speech with violence. If you have a differing opinion, they believe that that's violent, that that's somehow violence against them, initiation of force. Well, it's not. It's just talk. It's totally different than actual violence. If you want to talk about stuff to your heart's content. I don't care. I may disagree with you, but talk about it to your heart's content. But if you're going to start, actually doing violence, the problem is they equate speech with violence. They say speech is the same as violence. So it's okay to stifle your speech by killing you if necessary. I have a video called "There's No Escaping the Woke," where I go on about that in some detail, in fact. Drop of Truth mentioning Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals and actions. Why aren't fireworks considered as lethal weapons? A lot of them wouldn't be, but you get into something like this, yeah, that would be lethal if you harm somebody with it. From my perspective, though, when you get into fireworks around the 4th of July, if you don't have the right to shoot off any fireworks in the United States, you may have lost any liberty that's worth celebrating in the first place. So, like here in Lincoln, the fireworks are heavily restricted. When I've set off one of these in the backyard, which has been from time to time, it makes a loud bang, and I only send one off per season because I don't want my neighbors to figure out where the bang came from and call the cops on me. Drop of Truth saying Molotov cocktail is a lethal weapon. Yeah, of course it is. But again, there you're dealing with something that's actually good and explosive and will start other fires. This thing will blow your hand off. This thing will, cause a small, crater in the ground. It won't ignite other things. It's not that way. It's a more explosive version of a flash grenade, a flashbang grenade. It'll make a big light, make a big sound. It'll hurt you if you're standing on top of it, but otherwise it's relatively non-lethal. But if you throw it at somebody, if I light it and I chuck it at somebody and they've got it and it blows up in their stomach, chuck it over, hit the cop, boom, absolutely that's going to be potentially lethal. Yeah. Shadowman says the reality is that DHS has armed drones that can pick off individuals from the clouds. They were used in the Mahler takeover. There are more guns in the U.S. than people, literally. That's absolutely true. Yeah, and that's why The ones who are essentially communist terrorists are not going to be successful. They think this is going to be a pushover, and it ain't. It ain't. Let me talk about it. Let me do my prepared remarks here because I'm about 40 minutes in. I've got 8 or 9 people watching. That's pretty good for me. So I would say this, 2 weeks ago I did my live stream where I wondered if conditions in the U.S. couldn't be called a civil war. But as of last weekend, I can call it. I think today marks day 92 of the United States Civil War II. It had been bad before last weekend. It was basically 3 months of nonstop rioting all over the United States. And again, if you're unaware of the rioting, it's because you paid attention to the press and they declined to cover these riots. But you should ignore them. Nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. And that's not just about politics, it's about everything. The press has never actually gotten the facts reported right about anything ever throughout all of human history. Today, you should go to your news source, be it one of 2 sources or both, very most likely. You want to listen to first responder frequencies, people like the police, fire, ambulance, etc. And you can do this either with the Scanner Radio mobile app, which is what I'm listening to it on right here on my phone, or you can go to broadcastify.com, which I have up in a window because I'm watching the top live feeds, top 50 live feeds to see if anything's going on around the country that I should be paying attention to. I have links to both of those things in my description box. And the other source, of course, are Citizen Journalist live streams. You want to watch mostly the ones who are just standing there, pointing their cameras, and not saying anything. My constant advice for all citizen journalists, point your cam and shut up. You don't need to be listening to a talking head telling you about what you're seeing because you are smart enough to figure that out for yourself. But if you get your news from these sources, you will know that we are now in day 92 of nonstop rioting all over the United States. There have been at least 32 murders and hundreds of brutal injuries. There is at least $500 million in property damage, not to mention businesses that will never reopen, and dreams of people who have these businesses or wanted to be or worked for them that have been permanently crushed. And in response, cities have kowtowed to the rioters by cutting their police force service, thus creating more crime. See New York City for absolute proof of this. Local district attorneys will not prosecute rioters and simply release them back out to riot again. Mayors and governors march with the rioters. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden has come out in support of the rioters, as has Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, among many other Democratic politicians. Citizens are arming themselves in the affected cities and are fleeing the affected cities. And all of this has been called peaceful protest by sycophantic governments and the press. However, on Monday night, the citizens of Kenosha, Wisconsin decided that they'd had enough and they started fighting back. And that was the day that Civil War II began in earnest. I think historians will probably say it started 92 days ago, but we know for a certain fact that Civil War II is on as of August 24th, 2020, because that was the day that Kenosha started shooting back. It was the day that the rioters started taking casualties. It was the beginning of a battle that ended in the death of 2 rioters and injuring a 3rd. And the next day, August 25th, 2020, the riot began taking their first deaths in this war. That was the night that Kyle Rittenhouse, age 17, was attacked by rioters and defended himself with lethal force. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Kyle Rittenhouse, he did the right thing. Rittenhouse is currently under arrest for first-degree intentional homicide, though given the video evidence, it is obvious that it was justified, and have a link to basically somebody who's edited together all of the video in and around surrounding that. He was justified. So, what do you do when a mob attacks you? It is always better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And unless additional evidence shows up somewhere else, I am thrilled, frankly, that Rittenhouse defended himself. The woke are calling Rittenhouse a terrorist, looking for his scalp, telling all kinds of lies about him and his character. But the woke are scumbags. They are enemy combatants in Civil War II. Statistically, about 100% of them of the rioters are in fact the woke. And as we all know from my video on the subject, there is no escaping the woke. Link to it in my description box. And all of this spurred the city of Kenosha, Wisconsin, to ask for Wisconsin's National Guard to quell the riots. But we now have active combatants in Civil War II. It is, in fact, Civil War II, and there are two combatants. The woke, in form of rioters, and private individuals, and supporting government forces. Now, one hopes, I hate as a libertarian to be saying this, but it's true, that the government forces will prevail in short order, but I think that's actually a bad assumption. Enemy forces have now had 92 days to become entrenched. They have a tactical and a strategic advantage over other forces. And this is a fact that supporters of these government forces should really not take lightly. The enemy is entrenched. They have guns. They're not just, I've seen this on YouTube, not on Twitter. I've had an ongoing conversation trying to explain to people that no, they do have guns. They will use them. And you don't want to, cheer on or hope for a civil war, which is what I'm seeing on Twitter some. Civil wars are terrible. But they do have guns and other weaponry, and they are prepared to fight. Now, I don't know much of military type matters. I was never in the military, and I haven't asked anyone who is. But I would have to assume that the enemy's next move will be to launch preemptive strikes where they already have a strong foothold. So if you live in Portland, Oregon, or Seattle, Washington, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, I would urge you to flee. Take what you need and go as far away as you possibly can from your city. Because we are in a war. It will not be pretty. They never are, especially not civil wars. You can expect your families to be destroyed as sides are chosen. You can expect family members to be killed as the war progresses. You can expect to go long periods of time without food. We are in a war, and you must be armed for your own safety. You need to buy yourself a good handgun, a bolt-action rifle, because there's a nice and accurate for shooting from rooftops. You need probably a shotgun of some kind. I happen to like pump-action shotguns for the menacing sound they make. And lots of ammo. They will mean the difference between life and death, just as was the case with Kyle Rittenhouse. You need to practice with your firearms because they're not a point-and-click device. If you aim like a stormtrooper from Star Wars, the enemy's going to kill you. Keep your handgun on you at all times and keep your rifle and shotgun handy because we are in a war, and the enemy is intractable. They will not listen to reason. God knows I've tried. They will not stop. They have been brainwashed by 12 years of compulsory education that communism is good. And in fact, the fact that they're carrying around red flags with the Hamilton sickle on it pretty much bears that out. They are, in fact, fighting to overthrow what government we have and institute a totalitarian communist government in its place. And such a regime like this will kill you. This is, in fact, a war for life and death. You must be prepared, or you will end up dead or a slave. It's just as simple as that. Them's my prepared remarks. Let me get back into my... Wow, I can actually almost got away from me here. Drop of Truth is saying, fireworks are heavily restricted in Australia. Have them over water in New Year's Eve if you let them off. During an Australia summer, then wildfire is motorized. States like South Dakota, they have really two cities, and they're not large cities at all. It's not even like Omaha's 1 million. I could go out to my family's ranch land. If you want to see that, have a video on it. A trip to SYL Ranch, you can see the land. I could go out there and blow these things off to my heart's content, aside from spooking all the cattle and pissing off the neighbors. But you can blow those things off to your heart's content, and I have many times when I lived in South Dakota. Strike the Root the Row says local and state governments across the country are failing their tax-paying citizens to bend to their knee and these Marxist mobs. Yes. And it is not the job of the federal government to do that job. The state officials should be doing this. Yes, constitutionally, that's absolutely right. They should be state officials. I think it's going to grow larger than that, however, because there are so many different locations. Every night, for the last 3 nights, if I wanted to listen to something on scanner radio, I could be listening to rioting. It's just all over the place. People want to say that it's just democratic cities, and it's not. It's not just democratic cities. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. They're entrenched. They really are. But as you say, this destruction must end, and if the state and local authorities won't do it, people will do it, says Strike the Root the Row. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you should be prepared to do it because your government is failing you. Your governments are going to fail you, or they're not going to come in time. As I say, you have to remember that these people are now entrenched. They could attack at any time. I'm watching here and to see if I'm seeing any of that. Most of what I'm seeing is reasonably peaceful. Even the one in Portland seems subdued. It may just be the fact that somebody finally called the National Guard has had a somewhat calming effect on them tonight. But I wouldn't expect that to remain the case forever. Let's see. Shadowman says Rittenhouse was executing his rights. Absolutely. If they show up at your door, Shadowman says, there will be consequences. Yes. I don't want to give away, what the hell, I'll give away my strategy and tactics. Here in Lincoln, there is a downtown section of town, but it's mostly attached to like University of Nebraska at Lincoln's downtown campus. There are two very large campuses for the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and it's mostly attached to that. It's a lot of bars and stuff. There is the state capitol there and some government buildings and attorneys' offices and whatnots is associated with it. So you could have problems there, but if they ever start driving up my street, which is one of the it's not the major thoroughfare in Lincoln, but it's one of them. If they start coming up here and trying to shoot anything, they're going to find that I am perched on my roof with a bolt-action rifle. Just that simple. I go hunting, guys. Remember that. I go hunting. I hit deer. They run a lot faster than human beings. Let's see. Drop 2 says Rittenhouse shot in self-defense. Absolutely. There's footage on that is clear. He was defending himself. Oh, strike the root or throw. You're a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, 93 to 97. Well, I always hate saying it because it's such a... Everybody says it. But again, as always, thank you for your service, sir. Let's see. Semper Fi. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. USMC 8384. Again, Shadowman, thank you very much. Semper Fi, you guys. I have no military training. You tell me if you feel like I'm just missing it completely on what they might do, because I might. I don't know. Drop 2. Recommend a bolt-action rifle. Is 303 available as a bolt-action rifle? You can get a bolt-action rifle chambered in anything at all. I prefer them if you're doing hunting because the bolt action is a little more accurate when you're doing distance shooting. It's going to be more accurate for you. Nice good scope is good as well. I'm pretty sure that people who are like military snipers are using bolt action rifles. Same reason, because of the way the bullet is fed into the chamber and then locked in, it becomes a little more accurate. And the way that you pull the trigger is a little more accurate. So, but recommending a specific model, no, I probably couldn't at this point, just simply because it's been a long time since I've had to buy one. It's been a few years since I've been out hunting, and the rifles that are sitting up, I should point out, sitting up in what used to be my father's collection. I'm unclear what he's got chambered in up there. So. But I can tell you my own personal favorite handgun, the one that I use for my carry gun, is a full-size Model 1911 pistol that was made. It's the Kimber Custom Classic. Kimber makes a lot of 1911s that are heavily accurized right off of the factory floor. And when I first got it, it was a better pistol than I was a marksman. That's changed since then. I can pretty reliably hit things. As long as they're not moving out to about 100 yards with them. Not always, but about, and under good lighting and all sorts of things like that. What you have to remember is, pistols are not like what you see fired in the films. Pistols in the military are kept not for shooting the enemy. They're kept by officers to make sure that the people under them do what they say they're do, follow their orders, and they are authorized in wartime to shoot them if they don't follow their orders. They are basically a close-range weapon. You want something that's farther range, you need some kind of rifle. Like I say, for me, under the circumstances that I'm in right now, perched on my roof with a good hunting rifle that will kill a deer easily would be what someone would find up against with me. I won't have an AR-15. I will have a bolt-action rifle. So, and I'm used to shooting at targets that only halt for brief periods of time and then bound over the freaking brakes into, I will never forget, a large buck. You always go deer hunting during a mating season, because the bucks, which want to shoot most of the time, are bucks, the males, and they're stupid. They get stupid during mating season because the females give off a pheromone that attracts them. They get exceptionally stupid during mating season, and I will never forget. One time when we were in the year 2000, when a couple of uncles and I were out hunting at my family's ranch land, and we're up on the top of the hill, on top of this hill, and then down below us is a doe who had stopped to graze, and here comes this buck out in the middle of the open, which is something they almost never do. Well, somehow we missed the shot, and the buck just bounced away, doing, 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 over hill and over dale that had taken us the better part of 2 hours to hike as human beings. But then the buck got stupid, and he remembered that the doe was there, quietly made his way back, and that was the last mistake that he ever made. But the deer just bound all over the place, way faster than rioters. In flat surface, probably the speed of a good car in a road, but, if it's a bunch of rioters, you're going a lot slower. Shadow Man, right on, Second Amendment, absolutely. Yep, there's a reason. Snipers use full metal jackets, don't they? I don't know for sure what snipers use, to be perfectly honest. What you really want is a bullet that'll penetrate and cause as much tissue damage as possible. You don't want the bullet going straight through something. If it goes straight through, it's not necessarily going to stop it. You want something that's going to go in and then deform and cause tissue damage. In pistols, it's why you like hollow point rounds, because they will enter a target's body and then immediately start to deform at the edges and won't go through. It'll just and cause all kinds of tissue damage. So you like those kinds of things. But I don't know what military snipers actually use. I've never had occasion to talk to a person in the military about it, so I don't know. And just looking down here at the stuff that's going on this evening, a lot of crowds, a few cameras. I'm not seeing anything aside from fireworks and stuff that I would say necessarily is violent. They may have gotten smart tonight and decided that maybe it's not such a good idea to go out, trying to kill people, because Kenosha. I'm looking at Kenosha in particular. No, wait, that's Washington. It's disappeared. I'll have to look and see if we've got just because for kicks, I'm curious what's happening in Kenosha now. So let me see if we've got any other ones that are popping up. Nope. Kenosha, Portland, Louisville. I might take a look at that. Let's see. Shadow Man says Remington 700 strike through root throw. That is certainly a very good rifle, and you can get it chambered in all kinds of things. Shadow Man saying it's unwise to use a sniper weapon and can't fight in case you cannot fight a case if you kill someone with one. Yeah, well, no, probably true, but around here, where I'm at, bolt action rifles are not even remotely uncommon. For somebody to use that for longer range self-defense, that would be a common type of rifle, like Remington 700 or something like that. Are hollow points rounds legal to buy in the United States? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They're a preferred round for many reasons. They don't ricochet the same way. As I say, they cause a maximum amount of tissue damage because they hit the target and then immediately start to deform. So yeah, they're absolutely, what you really want for, like, if you're in a house with other houses nearby, or if you're in an apartment, you want to get rounds that are what are called frangibles. Now, these are ones that when they strike tissue, they will cause damage. However, if they hit a wall, even if it's just an apartment building room wall, they will basically get destroyed and turn to dust and won't go through the wall. And the problem with any regular bullet round when you're in a something like an apartment particularly, is if you happen to fire and you miss, it's going to go through God knows what and how many people's apartments before it finally hits an exterior wall and stops. And you always have to be aware of, it's one of Colonel Colt's 4 rules, always be aware of your target and what's behind it. You want to make sure that you know what you're shooting at and what the implications are if the bullet goes through it or if you miss. Be aware of your target and what's behind it. Shadowman says, Yaris is a hunting weapon. It's fine. Exactly. Yes. So many people in this part of the country have, hunting rifles. It's not even unusual. I think it's probably why we don't see as much of the ongoing widespread chaos. The ones they had in Omaha, again, Omaha's a metro area of about 1 million. They had one business owner who did protect his business. He was inside of his business when it was broken into, and they were planning to loot it and cause property damage. And he non-fatally shot a guy. Wasn't even arrested. It was obviously a case of self-defense, but they left him alone after that, and the riots were otherwise relatively peaceful. I say relatively in as much as they were riots, but nobody was killed. Let's put it that way. And that guy could have easily been, and other people could have too as well. Strike the root throw. Read Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Absolutely. Sun Tzu is a good person to, is a great guy to read. Sun Tzu, Machiavelli to some extent. Absolutely. Good books to read. No question. Well, I've given my usual Lancaster County stuff. So let me drop down to a little bit of Star Trek news. Some of my viewers come on because I'm a big science fiction fan. Used to do nothing but reviews of stuff before I went to doing commentary and things. And I went to doing commentary because even with science fiction, you cannot escape the woke. You just can't escape them. Fans of current science to Star Trek, as produced by a guy named Alex Kurtzman, I have come to the conclusion that they are every last one of them leftists because they will not argue. They are intractable. They will not agree to disagree with you. They will scream and bitch and moan. And if you start making anything like a negative comment about what they like, they get crazy, like you've just tried to attack them. They cannot deal with free speech at all. And when just for experiment's sake, I've gone and called them leftists from time to time, and they will immediately pop back, yeah, rah, 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 Trump supporter, rah, 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 rah. And I'm going, okay, leftists, yeah. It's you're the woke. So you can't even talk about science fiction and stuff without running afoul of these idiots, and they will threaten you with death. They will assault you at conventions. That's already happened. Again, I talk about this in great detail in my video. There's no escaping the woke. And you can't get away from them, which is why I started doing mostly commentary about politics. But there was some news every Thursday. We Are Starfleet is an anti-fan group. They're always trying to shush me up on Twitter. There's so many of them. God, you say anything negative. Alex Kurtzman, he sends out a tweet. If you say something, I got into a very long, protracted, stupid conversation with the guys. The very last time that I've decided I'm ever going to engage these schmucks. I'm not going to engage them anymore. I've got a Star Trek red alert symbol, that one from the movies where it's red and kind of flashing, and it says alert, and then underneath it says condition : troll. Anytime these guys try to come back at me with anything that I say, that's all I'm going to throw up from now on. I started doing that with him at the end of the conversation because he has to bashing my head against a brick wall for on and off for the better part of 24 full solid hours on Twitter. And I finally just got sick of it. And so I threw that up. And he tried to come back. I threw it up again in the next tweet. Tried to come back. Threw it up again and again and again and again and again until finally he just shut up. And that's the only way to deal with him. Call him a troll and do it over and over and over again until they finally just give up and quit. You don't pay any attention to what they say. Just throw up this troll animated GIF and you're done. But, hey, yeah. Oh, do you remember my tweet or something? Sorry, you guys, you have to drop, so straight through the throw. I have a work conference call to hop on, unlike our friendly communist writers. I have a job. I'll keep the best work. Absolutely. You as well. Thank you for dropping in and watching. Feel free. I'm probably going to be here to another couple of hours, depending on how things go. I don't want to run any longer than that. But, you know, if things go completely to hell in terms of rioters, I might stay up later than that. But I got lower back arthritis, so it kind of messes me up if I'm on for longer than about 3 hours. But anyhow, the Star Trek news. These are my Star Trek under Kurtzman. I guess there's one other that I didn't put up. These are my my own marketing memes. I make these from time to time. If you're a fan of Star Trek, the original series, you will recognize that guy who's looking bad in the gold shirt from an episode of Star Trek, the original series, where the character tends to kind of chew the scenery from time to time, but it fits with this show, unfortunately. So today is Thursday. Every Thursday, the new episode of Star Trek Lower Decks comes out. Yep, he's looking into the maw of the Doomsday Machine. Yes, except there's different ones for different series. So Star Trek Lower Decks, which is an animated series, comes out every Thursday. It is a perfect example of what, and I have a marketing meme for it that passes through here, I don't call it, the brilliant Rich Evans of Red Letter Media. Go watch every video they've ever made. Start with the Plinkett reviews of the Star Trek series and move on into the Star Wars ones. He calls it non-medy. Non-medy, you see, there are jokes that work and make you laugh. There are jokes that don't work and kind of fall flat, but you're pretty neutral about. And then there are jokes that make you feel worse after they're told. You start out like this, and you end up like this. Every single week, Star Trek Lower Decks is non-medy in totally, sometimes similar ways. This time, I don't even know how to describe it. As is always, there was nothing funny in it. That is my major problem. A lot of people have problems with it in terms of continuity and things like that. I'm going, it's a comedy series. We can just say this lives off in its own little world. If it was funny, I'd be okay with it, but it's not. It's never funny. It's just never funny. And this one is never funny in so many different ways. It's constantly bouncing around, fast-paced, trying to throw out a joke that falls flat, that's non-medy, throw out another non-medy joke, throw out some more, throw out references to other Star Trek. That's one of the market memes I've got up there because it references other Star Trek a lot. It's just reference Star Trek here, throw out non-medy there, non-medy Star Trek, non-medy other Star Trek. It's fast-paced and stupid. And there are 2 or 3 people who are characters in this that are good at what they do. They're decent enough at their jobs, and they're made fun of for it. The character who is basically the main character of this bunch is a complete slacker who shouldn't be doing anything on a starship in the first place. And she makes the other characters who are good at their jobs, intentionally tries to make them look bad all the time. It doesn't make any sense, and it is not very funny. It was pointed out, I don't remember who said it on Twitter, but it's pointed out something interesting about Star Trek under Alex Kurtzman. Star Trek Picard has a character who is, it's one of the main characters, who is an alcoholic, drug-addicted, deadbeat mom, and she's black. The main character on this, the ones who complete screw-up, always making everybody look bad, is black. They're both black women. And if it wasn't Star Trek, if it wasn't the darling of the woke, I'm pretty sure the woke would be pretty damn pissed off at that fact. The African American characters that he has shown us are some level of incompetent, or in one case, a alcoholic, drug-addicted, deadbeat mom. About the only thing she hasn't been is a hooker. Wait for season 2. Hopefully season 2 doesn't come. I don't know. There's rumors and stuff, but you never know how seriously to take that. Let's see. Super Cruise 63. Hey, nice to see you today. I didn't catch that you'd gotten in. On social media, told your leftist friends if you don't fight with police, you won't have a problem. When they replied, I didn't get it, that I don't wear a mask either. What B-brains? Yeah. Oh, Mariner's just obnoxious, Shadow Man. Absolutely. Well, on... let's see, because forgive me, I don't remember the guy who got shot in Kenosha, because frankly, after learning more about the case, I don't care. But they all go, oh, he was, because they were thinking maybe he was reaching for a knife when they shot him, and like, oh, well, we got let's see, black people get shot for having a knife, and I wrote back, I said, no, I'm a white guy, I carry a knife, I have a gun, it is with me in the car. And to begin with, if I'm ever taken, if the police want to talk to me, I just sit and be calm. I do whatever they say, whether I like it or not, because I get that they are part of a much larger system. There's no point. If a cop's got a warrant for your arrest, there is no point whatsoever in trying to argue the point with them or trying to run away or any of that, because they will take you in. That's what they have to do. There's no point. If you want to argue it, they have to wait until you talk to your attorney, your arraignment, maybe gets to trial and all that. You can't get out of it if the cop's got a warrant. Be cool. There's been times when I've been stopped for speeding. Used to be able to stop for speeding all the time in South Dakota until South Dakota raised its speed limit to 80 miles an hour. Until then, I was doing 80 miles an hour regardless, because I hate that stretch of road. And I-90 through South Dakota is one of the most boring stretches of road you'll ever drive. And so I would be screaming through there. So I'd occasionally get stopped for speeding. Hands on the wheel. Cop comes to the door. Officer, just so you're aware, I have a Model 1911 pistol. It is stowed in the thing beside me over here. Don't move. Don't say, be cool. Takes me out, takes me into the cruiser, gets back, sights me, and I'm gone. Same thing with my knife. I've had that happen too. Officer, just so you're aware, I have a pocket knife with a fairly long blade in my back pocket, on my right back pocket. So, okay, take it out for me. Why don't you put it on the seat of your car and we'll go back and talk. If you're cool with them, you will be fine. Doesn't matter whether you're black or white or green. If you're cool with them, you'll be fine. It's when you start to be an a-hole. It's when you start to resist arrest. It's when they shoot you with a taser and you still keep coming. That's when you're going to have problems. If you're just cool with them, even if you've broken a law, just be cool with them and you'll be okay, And if they stop you, I don't know. I'm sure there's some places where they stop people because they're black. I'm sure that happens. I'm not a black guy. I can't sue that. I'm an old white cisgendered male. I get it. I don't walk in your shoes. I'm not suggesting that I do. But I have the sneaking suspicion if you're just cool with them, yes, officer, hands on wheel. Yes, officer. They almost always, to me anyway, say, do you know why I stopped you? Well, I might have been going a little fast, or something like that. Don't admit it. But, I could have been going a little fast. Yes, you were doing 80 in a 65 zone. Oh, I didn't realize. Keep your hands on the wheel. Don't make any sudden movements. Be cool, Let's see. Getting back a bit to Lower Decks. Mariner is obnoxious. Yes, this episode, one of the unfunny things that she did. In a briefing room, handing out documentation and falling asleep on her feet. Okay. Any normal captain to begin with would be like, get out of my briefing room. I don't want to see you here ever again. Where is the transfer order? But beyond that, if it was falling asleep and snoring, it's just not funny. If it's a funny gag, I can cope. When it's just handing out and everybody knows it, and there's captain from another ship there making you look bad, it's not funny. It's just not funny. It is non-midi. It is making you feel worse after the joke is told. And the captain is horrible. Yes, the captain on that ship is absolutely horrible. It's and again, if it was a ship that was a story about a ship full of misfits and screw ups, I could cope with that. If you said, okay, we're going to take these guys, in Starfleet who nobody else wants, and we're going to put them on their own little ship and give them assignments that nobody else cares about, low-end stuff that we just don't give a crap about. Okay, I can cope with that as a premise for a story, for a show. And if you're telling funny jokes, I can deal with that. But nothing they do is funny. It's all. and my Decker one. You know, this one, Star Trek Picard, is horrifying to watch if you're much of a Star Trek fan from anything other than Kurt's Star Trek. Star Trek Discovery is like, oh my God. Star Trek Picard is, oh my God, what have they done? You know, and Star Trek Lower Decks is just going, oh God. It's the best of what they've got, and it all sucks. And yes, pattern detected, Shadow Man. Another black female who's a screw-up of some kind. Yeah. Again, if it wasn't for the fact that this was Star Trek, and it seems to be this particular incarnation of it seems to be the darling of the woke, I just have a hard time believing that they wouldn't jump up and down and scream and holler because one of the main characters in Picard is an alcoholic, drug-addicted, deadbeat mom, and black, and female. That is so unwoke, I don't know what to call it. Drop a tooth, you're black. The real world was calling. In this case, it was the washing machine. Well, there you go. Or your back, rather. I'm sorry. Super Cruise 63, maybe you should try a pie in the face. Might actually get a laugh. Who knows? Their problem is they don't know how to set up a joke. You know, the one at the end, the joke that they faded out on was... I'm sorry, I don't remember who the characters' names are because I just don't care. The green chick and the cyborg guy, she apparently doesn't like it when other people don't like her, and he was intimating that he knew, some people who didn't like her, and she immediately assaulted him and was bending his leg backward in the wrong place, you know, demanding that she tell him who didn't like her. Well, that's not funny. It's just not funny. You have to set up that kind of joke. It has to make sense, and it doesn't make any sense. It's just not funny. Might as well do pie in the face. You know, maybe get the Three Stooges on there. That might work. I don't know, but none of it's funny. Drop a tooth saying Lower Deck is too damn fast. They don't give you space to laugh. Not that it's needed. Yeah. It's just rapid fire shotgun. Let's see if we can get something out here that we think is funny and maybe somebody will laugh. And it never happens. It just never happens for me. But the other interesting Star Trek news, there's not enough space for a laugh track. Yeah, maybe they need a laugh track. Maybe then it would be funnier. Maybe they do. Maybe they do need a laugh track for that. If you ever watch some videos, there's some really good ones where they do they take I don't know, what am I trying to say? Blanking on the name of the show for no good reason. Big Bang Theory, and they'll edit it so that the laugh track is gone, and then it's so not funny. It really isn't very funny. It's just saying somebody saying something weird or nasty or sort of degrading to another person, and then a pause, and you realize, wow. You know, if it wasn't for the fact that these characters are who they are and we had an audience laughing at it, it wouldn't actually be that funny. Maybe. I don't have the capability to do it, but maybe if somebody, you know, if you out there have the good ability to do editing, try editing in with like a 1960s, stereotypical 1960s laugh track. Maybe that would work better. I don't know. Shannon Man, you have unexpected company. Well, yes, definitely try to make it back. Again, I got probably another, hour and a half-ish, something like that. Don't know for sure. John Cleese forbade a laugh track on Faulty Towers. Yeah, well, I mean, if you can get away with not doing it. Like the TV series MASH. That was a TV series that started out in the first couple of seasons with a laugh track. And then they took it away, and it was just as funny without it. But this show, I think maybe you need a laugh track. Maybe you need a laugh track. I don't know. But it sure as hell ain't funny, and that's my biggest gripe with it. It just isn't funny. But there's another bit of interesting news. Star Trek Discovery, which is headed into its third season in, a couple of months, I guess. I'm not sure. That hunk of junk. They're going to air the first season on CBS broadcast television. Keep in mind that the Star Trek property, and in particular Star Trek Discovery, was supposed to be so good that it was going to carry the CBS All Access network. They have nothing going for them. CBS All Access has nothing going for it that would make you want to pay extra money a month away from like Netflix. There's just nothing except Star Trek. They bet the farm on Star Trek. And, fans have been theorizing because there's no way to tell. They won't share their viewership numbers, which to me tells quite a lot. Because if they were going to, if they had a smash hit on their hands, they'd be happy to throw out those numbers. But they don't throw out those numbers. And you see lots and lots of fans, who object to the thing. It's only the woke who seem to like it. And so I have a sneaking suspicion and have all along that the show's not doing that well and never has. It's just that since they bet the farm on it, they cannot be seen to having that intellectual property failing, because if it does, so will their streaming service fail. It will die. So they're going to take and put Discovery on broadcast CBS broadcast television. Okay, that tells me that it couldn't have been all that great doing that well in terms of viewership numbers on All Access, because if it was, they wouldn't have to put it on free broadcast. They do the same thing with a couple of episodes a year with all of their series. They put them up on YouTube for free. When was the last time you saw Netflix doing that ever with anything? To me, that says a lot. The fact that they won't share the numbers says a lot. And now they're going to take this show that was the cornerstone of the streaming service and put it on broadcast? Oh, really? Why do you need to do that if it's so freaking awesome? I mean, if it was awesome, people would just be, paying money in cash hand over foot to get your service and then streaming the thing on demand. So I'm getting a kick out of this because I think what's going to happen is it's going to take a nosedive. I think it'll probably do well the first week, maybe two, and then it'll just go off a cliff. And for the first time, we'll actually have some, tangible numbers about how it does. So I'm very, very interested to see that. As I say, the fact that they're doing it at all tells me, hey, wait a minute. Nobody else has to do this. You don't see any of those Netflix shows heading to broadcast except like overseas or something like that, where they have to lose licensing. This tells me a lot, and I think it's going to crash and burn in the ratings. I'm kind of hoping to see that. I would like to see the people who are running this kicked out, and somebody who understands what this property is really about put in place. Let's see. Yeah, Drop True says you need nitrous oxide to laugh on Star Trek Lower Decks. Yeah. Supergroove63 says, no, I think they need comedians to help them write jokes. You missed the greats like Don Rickles. He was funny without writing jokes. Yeah. Oh, sure. You could, if you had good writers. Yeah. If you had good writers, it would be funny. But we don't. We have crap writers. Drop True says, discuss on Twitter, it could be Emma Watts using Discovery on normal TV to help remove Kurtzman. Could be. I don't know. Could be. I never know what to make of all these rumors that you hear. There's at least one major YouTuber in the fanish space on YouTube who constantly says they have inside information and is constantly wrong. Why, I assume the only reason that they watch this person is because he's what I call an outrage YouTuber. He's somebody who makes outrage videos because his viewers want to be angry about something. And they found after The Last Jedi that outrage really sells, and so they're outraged all the time because their viewers turn in because they're the choir, and the choir apparently loves being outraged. They're preaching to the choir, and they love being outraged. So he's always got this stuff, and you always hear these, oh, well, it won't be long now before this show's off, or it stops, or it won't be long now before, Kurtzman's gone, and Emma Watts, who is now their executive at Paramount and CBS in charge of this property, is kicking him out, and I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think about any of it. I'm always just, let's wait and see what happens. Let's wait and see what we get. Other than that, I have no idea what's going to happen. But that is the Star Trek news for the week. Star Trek Lower Decks continues to suck, and the Star Trek Discovery is about to suck on CBS broadcast television next season. I wonder how they're going to do with only 10 episodes anyway. Not like I'm going to watch it. I've seen them all, so I don't care. I've forced myself to sit through the first 2 seasons. I don't pay for it. BitTorrent. Oh, excuse me. BitTorrent. Oh, excuse me. But you don't even have to do that. I have a video talking about intellectual property piracy if you want to see it. It is purely an informational video for the benefit of, because for 40 years I had an IT career, but one of my specialties was IT security. So that video is designed as a purely informational video for my colleagues in IT security so that they know what the current problems with IP security are and how to try to, guard against it. Use the Brave web browser, Brave, type watch space quote whatever you want to watch in quotes online free. Make sure you have ad blockers because you'll get to sites that are swimming with ads. But after a few clicks, you will find some that have all kinds of series. You don't even have to download them. You can just stream them anywhere in the world. So that's just, Dropper 2 says, Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 5 preview has Boimler's girlfriend getting pantsed. Yes, I saw that. Yeah, that's looking stupid. And Mariner accusing Boimler of having a holodeck girlfriend. How sad, she says, and yet we have met nude male weightlifting holo plays. Yeah, like the one that I have for my non-mini meme. Yes, it's... And if you look at what Mariner was assigned to clean out of the holodecks, I don't think that was human excrement. In the context of what joke they told about it, I don't think that's human excrement at all. I think it's the same as the poor guy that has to go and squeegee out the booths in the X-rated theaters. Pretty sure that's what they're talking about. Dropper 2 says, the writers can't remember what's happening 1 week to the next. Is that meth or coke side effect? I don't know. I don't know. I will say there's, oh God, why am I blanked on his name? I've known about this actor since he was in Sliders. Somebody tell me. The one of the major voice actors on the show, who is, I think, married to Rebecca Ramjan. Why am I blanking on his name? Anyway, I engaged him briefly on Twitter because he has now tweet somebody named, Glory Holes or Glory Hollows. I think Hollows in this case. But he has twice now tweet quoted, no, not John Stamos. I'm not remembering his name. Jerry O'Connell. That's who it is. Jerry O'Connell, and I've known about his acting since Sliders. I like his work. I have no problem with his work. But it's a YouTuber, I'm not a YouTuber, Twitter guy with the handle STD Sucks. And he's had bad things to say about this. And Jerry O'Connell has tweet quoted him several times now. The second time he did it, I wrote a multi-string tweet back that says, I don't know if you want to open this can of worms. Because, there's a lot of fandom is contentious to begin with. There's quite a number of people who don't like Star Trek under Kurtzman, and even if you are making good work, they're going to be negative just because we've all got a bad taste in our mouth. And he understood what I was saying. Actors tend to have very fragile egos. Look at Ruby Rose, right? I think I hated Batwoman. She was a block of wood as far as I was concerned. But she got such backlash when she was first cast because she wasn't gay enough for the role, and she eventually left social media altogether. And as someone who was a former actor, I don't want to see somebody who looks like a good enough guy, like Jerry O'Connell is, decent enough human being, and he's cool. It's not like some other cast members I could mention who've just been hostile to fans. He's cool about it. When this guy says something bad about his show, he comes back with some good notice or other, and or this is doing well, and he's fine about it. He's perfectly, cool. I don't want to see a guy like that, end up getting a really bad taste in his mouth or feeling bad because he's got all these fans coming down on top of him. And I said to him, look, this has nothing to do with your work. Your work is fine. There's no problem with the work that you're doing here. It's the series itself. You're doing the best job you can. We all think that's great. But this, you're not, it's like Jar Jar, The guy who played Jar Jar got really depressed and stuff because everybody hated that character. You don't want that to happen to an actor. It's not that guy's fault that Jar Jar sucked, and it's not Jerry O'Connell's fault that this show sucks. So I was like, you may not want to open this can of worms. It leads to a place, even though you're being cool about it, it may lead to a place. Maybe you should just let this sleeping dog lie. He's said, no, that's cool. And I'm like, okay. He, responded back to me. Okay, as long as you're ready for it. We don't want you ended up having to go off of social media because it's too depressing for you. So, I don't know. He's an interesting guy if you want to, follow him, Jerry O'Connell. He'll be upbeat about his show, and he'll be cool with you if you engage him and it's bad and you think it's bad. He'll be cool with you about it. Always remember when you're dealing with something like that, just because the show sucks doesn't mean that the people involved who are saying the lines that they are given to do aren't trying the best that they possibly can. It is not their fault that what they're being fed is crap. Drop Truth, what a slider's about. It was not sliding through time. It's from parallel world to parallel world. And they can't find their way home. They keep moving from one parallel Earth to another, some of which there's one parallel Earth that apparently is different from the original only in the squeakiness of what am I trying to say? A gate in a fence. Sometimes they can be really, really close, and sometimes you get Nazi Germany, and sometimes you get even weirder stuff. So it's them going back and forth between alternate universe, parallel worlds, and so forth. So it's a pretty good show. He's much younger then. It was in the early 1990s, I think, but it's a good show. I always liked the work he did there. I have no problem with the work that he's doing here. It's voice work, so it's a little bit different, but I have no problem with what he's doing here. Drop Truth asks if I've seen the biopic Xena. Zoe Saldana, who played her, played all the instrumentals and sang the songs, has now apologized for not being black enough. Jeez, Nina. Okay. I have not seen that. Why does it not surprise me that somebody would have to... It's just stupid. It's like Ruby Rose being jumped on because she wasn't gay enough. She wasn't gay enough. What do you mean she's not, stereotypically really, really butch? She's feminine enough that even heterosexual males, such as myself, can find her attractive? What does that mean? The fact that she has at various points in her life slept with guys, but is now a pretty committed lesbian, but she's not gay enough? Yeah, it's just stupid. It's just stupid. And that was before the show even started. And I have no problem with her being gay or anything else. I just have a problem with the fact that she was a block of wood the whole time. Let me glance here at the live streams that I'm seeing. Washington, D.C. looks pretty crowded. Very, very crowded. We have multiple streams from Washington, D.C. I'm not going to put them up because they're being cool. I can say that for them. They're at least being cool. Maybe I'll put... Nah, I don't see anything on there that really warrants my spending the effort to put all this stuff up here, I don't think. But, and what I'm hearing on the scanner at Wisconsin at Kenosha is not bad. So, how well armed are the folks in my town? I couldn't tell you that for sure. I know that that hunting is not at all unusual. So, having various types of like bolt action rifles and stuff like that. I know family members and myself who have concealed carry weapon licenses. Open carry is legal here. You don't see it very much, but it is legal here. Large number of people in this part of the country have guns. It's, when you get out into more rural areas, you'd be hard-pressed to find a 12-year-old that doesn't have a .22 rifle. You just be hard-pressed. You get into South Dakota, like where my family's, ranch land is. Oh, God. You have to do... It's against the law, except at various times of the year, but you have to hunt prairie dogs. You have to kill the things. They're just absolutely destructive. They'll destroy fields because they'll go out and they're so prolific that they'll completely destroy fields. You can't grow stuff in it. The grass will stop growing. The cattle, if you put them in there, will trip and break their legs in the freaking holes. So you have to shoot them en freaking masse. Just go out with shotguns and blam, 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 blam. If you want to make a sport out of it, you get a 22 rifle and start shooting 22 rimfire at them. And if you want to see them bounce a little bit, you get a 223 and rifle and shoot at them. But you've got to go and kill the things. So it's not even unusual. People will carry guns in their vehicles. When I was growing up, it doesn't happen so much anymore, but when I was growing up, it wasn't even unusual. The University of Nebraska, which has about 30,000 people here in Lincoln, but it wasn't even unusual to see guys with gun racks in their pickup trucks. There was a lot of pickup trucks. It wasn't even unusual to see gun racks in pickup trucks when I was going to UNL. It's been quite a while. I imagine that's probably changed, but it wasn't unusual. It wasn't unusual at all. I don't think my dad's, my late father's gun collection is particularly large. I have to guess he's got 15 or so. I don't know. He's got at least 7 or 8 different types of rifles, 4 or 5 different large caliber handguns. But it's not, I don't think it's a particularly unusually large number of guns. People around here tend to be fairly well armed. Would they permit the atrocities of Portland? No, it would never have gotten to that point. No, our police would never have let it got to that point at all. I mean, even what they had, if those people had turned that ugly, they'd have turned the fire hoses on them or something. They'd have gotten them out. They would never have let it go that far. And if it got to the point where people are driving around and causing problems, and because nothing is that far away. I mean, you can go from one side of Lincoln, Nebraska to the other in 20 minutes. In the worst of traffic, maybe half an hour. So I mean, it's not like it's going from the city out to the suburbs like it is in Chicago. So if they started driving down my relatively major thoroughfare, and or marching down it, and causing problems in terms of destroying property and stuff like that, ain't gonna happen at my house. Ain't gonna happen, because I have too many places to sit and stop that from occurring. They would be turned back at my house, if not long before. So, Artenamal says Batwoman won't be as much fun to watch without Ruby Rose. Man, if I was them, I'd just say, okay, let's see if we can get Ruby Rose to do a series finale and be done with it. I don't know what they're going to do in terms of writing in a black woman for that. I don't know how you're going to do that. They were in the middle of some stuff that was integral, that, Ruby Rose, the character of Kate Kane, was integral to those stories. So what are you going to say, that like her white father and white mother, bio mom, and now dead Asian adopted mom had a black kid? Are you just retconning it? What are you going to do? You had okay, all these white people, and Bruce Wayne is white. What do you retcon? They were in the middle of some stuff that I don't know how they're going to pull out of that. And if it was me, and knowing that the show sucks and it has a safety rating that astonishes me how bad it is, I would be like, let's just forget about it. Let's just get a series finale and cancel it after that. We can pay her a ton, but give her a check with a lot of zeros on the back to come back to our terrible, unsafe production where we've crippled one person and nearly crippled her. We'll just get her to come back for 2-hour series finale, be done with it. But I don't know what they're going to do. Drop of Truth says prairie dogs breed like rabbits. Kangaroos breed like here. Yes. Oh God, yes. They just, and they're prairie dogs, but they're really prairie rats. they're just absolutely a pest that you have to kill lots of. If you want to look at it, there is a The guys at Red Letter Media, they have a show called Best of the Worst, where they'll watch 3 very bad movies, oftentimes picked at random, and then decide which of them is the best of the worst. And one of the ones that they watched was something Varmints. Let me see if I can find it, because it's so damn funny. Let's see. Media Varmints. Let me see. How about Best of the Worst Varmints? Because the video is actually on YouTube. Okay, I found it. If you search YouTube for Exploding Varmints #1. Yeah. It's a video by some guys who basically show you how you can go out to like farmers and ranchers and get their permission, because God will they give it to you, to go out and kill prairie dogs. And it's nothing but a video of them shooting prairie dogs. You have to be prepared for the fact that all you're going to see through this entire half hour is just prairie dogs being shot, right? It's really funny for about 10 minutes. And then after that, it isn't. But that's, if you watch that, you get an example of just how bad it is. And yeah, if you go to farmers or ranchers and say, hey, you mind if I go out and I shoot some of your prairie dogs? They go, yes, go. Shoot as many of them as you want, Let's see. Here we got, even in the People's Republic of California, Super Cruise 63 says, when I was in high school, we had the gun racks in our trucks, and they had handguns in them, and we didn't have problems like that back then. My father was fond of telling a story. When he was 12 years old, he got a note from his father and went to the local hardware store and bought a .22 rifle. That was all he needed, just a note from his father said it was okay for him to buy it. He went to the hardware store, bought a .22 rifle, took it to school with him, and the only caveat was that the teacher made him put the rifle into the cloakroom, which is where they had their coats and stuff, because it was causing too much of a distraction in class. All the kids were like, ooh, cool, new rifle. Can I take a look at it? Let me see. So he said, no, you got to put that off in the cloakroom. Wait for recess, wait for lunch, after school, go to your heart's content. I have 2 uncles who used to shoot, like prairie dogs and stuff on their way home from school all the time. It's not the gun that's the problem; it's the socialization that's the problem. We've taught people that I don't know exactly what to call it, but we've given them a certain mental illness that causes them to go and shoot up places now. I don't know what it is. That and the fact that anytime that we've had a mass shooting, if I'd been there with my Kimber Custom Classic, it may very well be that none of those people or less people would have been killed, because I might have gotten a bead on the guy. More guns equals less crime. That is a reality. The more people have the ability to defend themselves, the less crime there generally is. Our Tenemel says farmers beg people to shoot feral hogs in Texas. Yeah, it's open season on them. Yeah, I'm sure it's very similar to the way things are in South Dakota and probably western Nebraska and stuff. I just haven't been out there. But they have the same problem. It's a natural prairie, so you get prairie dogs everywhere. And, there was a time, right, when the buffalo were, roamed the plains in massive, massive herds. Well, you didn't get the prairie dogs because they'd be trampled by all the buffalo. But, the buffalo were long ago killed off. It's not the same with cattle. And so, you just get this huge population of prairie dogs, and you just go kill the things from time to time. Whenever humanly possible. If you've got some free time, just kill them. It isn't even fun anymore. When I was out there one time, all of my uncles and a second cousin or 2 were out there, and it was when they were much younger, and so was I. And, going out and plinking prairie dogs was fun for a while. But if you live out there all the time and you have to do it, it's just a freaking job. Oh, God, go shoot some prairie dogs, So, yeah, if you go out there, just ask, stop somebody, where's your worst prairie dogs? Over there. Okay, Can we go shoot them? You bet. Kill them all, you know. Let's see. Dropper 2 says, when I was in Crown Point, Indiana in 97, fellow we were working with told me that nearly every truck in line dancing car park would have at least one gun. I assume it's something like that in Nebraska still. I assume it's something like that still. I don't think we talk about it as much as we used to. But like I say, I don't think my father's gun collection is anything like unusual. Dropper 2 says, made you laugh when they carry a gun, drive a truck at 16, but they can't drink alcohol until they're 21. Yeah, well, you know, I've heard my uncles tell stories about that when they were younger. And goodness knows, I figured out ways to get away with the worst night of my life. Well, most of the next day. Oh, man. I was so underage, and I went to a college party that was with people who were in theater because a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor, and so I was with these theater people. Just got totally hammered. Completely hammered. I was way underage. I got completely hammered. And the thing was, it was probably, an hour and a half, 2-hour walk from that place to my home, right? Where I'm at right now. But it was across the street from my father's psychological practice, right? So here it is about 3 a.m. I'm completely wasted off my ass. And I need to go home. I'm thinking, I better get home because the next day I was supposed to be out doing some, because when you have your own practice like that, you end up, being with your kid half the day working on, carpentry stuff, structural things that need to be made for the building. And that was what was going on the very next day. It was a Friday night. The very next morning, I was going to be out there at that place. So somebody offered me a ride home, and I'm just so wasted. And I said, no, I think I better walk. Give me time to sober up. I know for a fact that I went at least 15 blocks out of my way in one direction and then walked back. I'm sure of it. I'm sure I did. I know that at some point I stopped, I think at a Safeway, and I got a couple of candy bars. But I woke up the next morning at about 8 a.m., because that's when my dad got me up, with a candy bar on the pillow next to me. And 20 minutes later, we were across the street from where this freaking party was, doing this carpentry work. And I'm completely, God, I don't want to be doing this. I haven't had any sleep. I was barely sober now. And oh my God, I can't believe right over there was where I had this party last night. I was there 3 hours ago, Worst night of my life, and completely illegal to be that way, but nobody cared. Batwoman had a rating of 2.9. Supergirl had a rating of 5.9. That's how bad Batwoman was. Batwoman just never made any sense. The plots themselves just never made any sense. They were constantly going from one antagonist to the next, and the main antagonist would be blaming one person for her troubles this week, and then another person for the troubles the next week, and never figuring out who really was the problem, which was her. Have any of you seen Lovecraft Country? I haven't. I like it. Great production values, good acting, good plot so far. I haven't seen it. No, I haven't seen it. Ted Turner brought the bison back from extinction. Is that true? No. The bison were never in any danger of extinction. There's always been plenty of bison around. It's just that, before the white settlers got here, there were herds of thousands of them across this part of the country. There were just herds of thousands. And they got, the thousands got hunted out. They were never close to extinction. It's just that their numbers dwindled way, way down. Hold on a minute. Hold on. We got one going on here in Lincoln. It's not very big. I can tell where they are. But we have a protest this evening in Lincoln. It is down at the city-county building. Not very many people. When I was down there, there were at least 200. Right here I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I can count 14 people, so that's nothing. Okay. Somebody's got a stream up from Lincoln, Nebraska, so I caught that and I went, hold on a minute. But in terms of the bison, no, they were never in any danger of extinction. It's just that their population dropped really dramatically over the course of the 19th century. That's all. It's a video idea, Bill. Prairie dog catch and cook. Not much meat on them. But still, that wouldn't get rid of them in the ring. You've got to kill them in such huge numbers. I mean, you could go out in the afternoon and just sit there, and I've done it. You just sit there out of the pickup window, pa-chung, pa-chung, pa-chung. It's great target practice. You have to get good at it pretty quick. It's good target practice. You were a techie theater major before you were in college, Art Tendemel says. Yeah, before I dropped out to work. They have the best parties confirmed. Yes, I remember that party that I went to. Not only was there more booze than I could shake a stick at, but there was also a room with stoners in it. You knew, because here's everybody just, all honesty, man, I like being around stoners more for a party than I do drunks. Drunks, to get loud and aggressive. Stoners just sit there, and listen to music. But you could always tell, here's all these loud drunk people. And, oh, there's a room full of very quiet people. Thems must be the stoners, Because regardless of whether or not it's legal or illegal, it ain't like it's hard to get weed anywhere that has a college. I'm too old. I wouldn't know how, at this stage of the game, if I went walking around in a, down at a college, hey, man, you know where I can get some green? They're going to look at me and go, yeah, okay, short hair, guy in his 50s. Gee, I wonder whether he's a sergeant, a lieutenant. What is he in the police department? But it's not like it's hard to get. It isn't like it's hard to get. But, yeah, they have a lot of really good parties. We used to... One of the things we used to do when I was coming up, because it's long ago enough now that it matters, but we used to, every Saturday practically, if I was in a play, every Saturday the cast would, after the show, would knock off and go see Rocky Horror Picture Show. I'm not sure that it even shows anymore in town, but it used to. These days, of course, everybody has it on home video. I'm not sure whether that plays in Lincoln anymore. I might find out. I've always said I wouldn't go back to it, particularly. Does it still show at the Joyo? Huh. There's a theater called the Joyo Theater that's out in what used to be and they're closed for COVID, I'm sure. But they may still, Fridays and Saturdays show. Yeah, it looks like they're still showing Rocky Horror on Friday and Saturday nights. I'll be damned. Yeah, they've got multiple pictures of it, so they must still be showing it. We used to go out there every, like I say, Saturday or so, or maybe a Friday after a show, and watch Rocky Horror and get drunk and that sort of thing. So, yeah. Drop of Truth says, are you going to do a video on using a green screen soon? Yeah, at some point soon. It's just that all this other stuff has sort of come up, and I'm not, I haven't had time for a variety of reasons. There's a number of things going on personally that I can't talk about, but involves one of the reasons I'm living where I am now. So, just watching this one in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's nothing. I think they're probably going to go home by midnight. But I've said repeatedly, because Rocky Horror is actually originally a stage production. There is a theater play called a musical called The Rocky Horror Show. I don't know how on the basis of that play it ever got made into a movie, because the movie is all about, the movie is about the audience participation. Without the audience participation, you barely have a movie at all. I mean, some really catchy songs in some cases, but really as a movie, what's it got going for it? Nothing. It's the audience participation. But I've always said, if they do a stage mounting of that anytime soon, it is the only reason that I would ever come back and do any work with that pack of liberals, because that's all actors are just nothing but crazy communist liberals. I would do that if I could play the narrator, if I could play the criminologist. I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey. I do that. Anybody watching this can say, okay, I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey. That is my audition for Rocky Horror Show. There you go. Drop Truth, we had a cinema theater in Perth, Western Australia that showed the Rocky Horror Picture Show for almost 5 years straight. The audience used to dress up. Yeah, that's what happens everywhere with Rocky Horror. And 5 years straight, the Yo-Yo has now been at it for 30, 40 years. I think the first time I went to that, I probably was 15 years old, maybe 16, so it's around 40 years. But yeah, the audience participation, dressing up, the audience going through and doing the play. I mean, mimicking what's going on screen. They have characters who do that, people who are doing that, not professional actors or anything, but the audience participating, where, they'll, whenever Janet Weiss is named, Janet Weiss, slut, yell that out. When Frank says, a toast, everyone throws toasts. A little bread toast, and then when it's raining, everybody puts a newspaper over their head like Janet on screen. Sing along with the songs and things like that. Add lines in between. That's mostly what's good about the film. If you should never watch Rocky Horror Picture Show just sitting down to watch it on a DVD or a Blu-ray. Just don't do that. It's not fun that way. It's a dumb movie. The movie really is all about the audience participation. You should really see it in a theater if at all humanly possible. If you can't, at a party with a bunch of people, preferably when you're not in a legal state of mind, because it's more funny that way. It's more fun. But the movie itself, just it's why. The sequel Shock Treatment was dreadful. Yes, I have copies of both. I've got various different copies of both. I've got a Rocky Horror that's got the audience participation in it, and I've got it without. I've got it with only the songs. I've got the soundtrack itself, and then I have Shock Treatment and the soundtrack. Yeah. Bad movie. It never took off, and you were never going to get that cult classic out of it again. That was a one-time lightning in a bottle. You would never, ever, ever get it again. And they remade it recently. MTV did a remake. It sucked. You can do it on stage and have it work. I've seen good stage productions. There's a New York cast did it around the turn of the century. That was really good. They did a really good stage production of it. I haven't seen any of the stage productions in my area, but those can be really good, especially now that you have an audience who's expecting to participate. You can pause and react somewhat. As I've seen one where they actually got Richard O'Brien, who was he wrote it. He wrote all the songs. In the movie. He plays Riff Raff, one of the characters, and they had a stage production where he was the criminologist, and so he's reading out of the book that the criminologist reads from. The audience yells out something that is what they typically yells out in the movie. And he says, "No, that's not what it says here." You can do that sort of thing. Just ad-lib your way through doing some interaction with the audience. So you can do it as a stage play now. But yeah, Shock Treatment was terrible. Just terrible. Let's see. Yes, when he said he didn't like his teddy, you knew he wasn't no good kid. But when he threatened your life with a switchblade knife, what a guy, make you cry, and I did. Okay, I'll shut up. PRC, you had them too. Midnight Movies, Rocky Horror, and Heavy Metal. Yeah. Oh, Art Animal, you met Barry Bostwick, Patricia Quinn, and Little Nell at a Tucson Comic-Con. Patricia stayed in character as Magenta the entire time. It was great. Well, that'd be fun. That would be fun. Barry Bostwick. Wow. I saw him a few years later in a really terrible movie called Delta Force. Oh, boy. You want to see him in tight outfit, man. Watch Delta Force. Elon Musk ripped off a story from Heavy Metal. Yeah, with the car in space. Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, Little Nell's interesting. I didn't realize until many years after I'd seen the movie. But she was a nightclub owner in a very successful one in New York City. I had no idea. So. Well, let's check the time. It's almost 11. Our feed from Lincoln, Nebraska is completely shut off. Washington, D.C. Let me look at my various feeds. Looks like it's under control. The cops have that under control. Portland looks pretty under control. I don't see anything going nuts right now. So, let me see what has come up on Frackbook, Frack Up Your Life book, in terms of new live feeds. Today, all live, and of course they aren't live. I hate you, Frackbook, when you do that. Sacramento. That's somewhere else. Live. Kenosha, part 2, but that looks pretty dead too. I think we have it pretty quiet tonight. I think they're the fact that they sent out the National Guard to Kenosha is probably causing something of a reduced number of people out. But I don't expect, as I said in my prepared remarks, I do not think that that's necessarily going to stay the case. If it was me and I was them, I would be starting to do things in places where I'm entrenched, before they get a chance to send anybody out to quell it. The only way this really could have been stopped was if Minneapolis had squashed it down good and hard the very first night. But by caving to them, by cutting their police force, and doing anything other than just calling out the National Guard on night 1, and getting out the fire hoses on night 1, and just spraying the hell out of them, getting them totally dispersed on night 1. That was what caused everything else. City Fathers of Minneapolis, Minnesota, this is all your fault. You could have stopped this, and you didn't. And not only are you fracking up your own city, because, as one of my viewers mentioned last week, pointed me to a news story. They're requiring you to pay, if your business was destroyed, they're requiring you to pay taxes on it before you move out of it. Your destroyed business. Well, guess what, guys? You do that, and what happens? They don't come back. They just leave and don't pay the taxes. Well, there's a good idea. So you erode your tax base. That means you have less to spend on things like cops. That's going to work out well for you. Not that it matters. They started cutting their police force. And look how well that turned out for you idiots. One wonders if they will ever get their brains together. Watching Washington, D.C. here. Let me look and see what the current top 50 scanners are. Kenosha's at about 1,000, but it doesn't really look... I don't know. Let me turn it up so I can hear them. Washington, D.C. has got a lot of shaky cam, but I think that's because they're trying to show... They have a front line of cops who are trying... What the hell? I'll just put it up. Yeah, this one right here... May not be able to see the big one above me. That's the shaky cam in Washington, D.C. Let me rearrange some of these windows because it's going to be hard to make out any of these guys. Oops, wrong one. Sorry. I'll just take you down here for a minute. This is a map of Kenosha, Wisconsin that we probably don't need as well. So, frick. Grabbed the wrong one. So many elements on this page now. But yeah, this big one here, and it's being reflected in some of the other ones from Washington. Let's see if I can get these so that they're... Now, these are other people on YouTube who are already aggregating this stuff. So this one here is Washington. This one you can barely make out. Down here is Washington. That's Washington. So this one in the corner, this big one, and the two right down here are Washington. That one next to it is Portland. And you get up to this next one. The center one here is Washington, D.C. That one's Washington, D.C. That one's Washington, D.C. That one's Washington. That one's Washington, D.C. Whole bottom row is Washington, D.C. One here is Washington. Got a lot of them in Washington. This one's Washington. Portland's got a lot of people. That could go to hell. but there's a lot of Washington, D.C. ones out there. With the stage, Robert 2 says, when the stage 4 restrictions are dropped in Melbourne, I fear we'll get a mass exodus into New South Wales. Yeah, who the hell knows? Evening, Jeanette. Good to see you here this evening, even if it is for only probably the last hour. As you may be able to see here, I'm running some people's live streams are going on with the... let me do one other thing here. Don't like having all this black. There. So you can kind of see we've got a whole bunch of people doing a whole bunch of stupid things. It's a little hard to follow. A huge percentage of these are on the ground in Washington, D.C. The ones that are shaky are mostly because they're holding their cams up pretty high because they're trying to get views of the crowd. Washington, D.C., none of them is particularly violent that I can make out. I may pull down a couple of these because they're just not relevant. Let me yank this one off the screen. Oh, wrong layer to yank off the screen. Let me pull you off the screen. Make things a little less complicated. What are you doing? Why are you not? Oh, you're the wrong one, too. Sorry. There we go. Okay, most of what you're seeing here is Washington, D.C., and it isn't much to look at, to be perfectly honest. I mean, you can see there's a line of police, and they're keeping them largely contained, although the one in the back, I mean, because they've got two sets of them that are sort of pulling together. The cops here are keeping these guys in there, but you can see off in the back that there's another group of them. Or maybe that's just police vehicles, I'm not sure. But Jeanette says, you live on a farm, need a place to hide? Give it some time. We might give it some time. It doesn't look too bad out there so far tonight. But the night is young. It is midnight out there in Washington, D.C. It is, after all, Thursday. That's not a big night for it. Fridays and Saturdays will usually be the worst because people don't have work the next day. Even if they do have work to go to now, they don't have work next day. So they're busy getting drunk and God knows what. Let me make myself bigger since I can. There. Oh, cool things you can do. I use OBS, Open Broadcast System. It is free software, free and open source. Always say, grab that when you possibly can. Get free and open source software. But I believe that Jeanette, if I'm not mistaken, she's from Nebraska, same as me. She just lives out in the rural part of the state as opposed to where I live, which is in Lincoln. So... But yeah, it doesn't look bad. It looks like Washington is probably worse than anything else, but they're a little hard to tell just because when you see all this shaky cam stuff, it gives you the impression that maybe things are worse than they are. But really all it is just somebody putting their camera up there. Super Cruise 63 says, you find here in Nebraska. Yes, thank you. Oh, cool. Super Cruise 63 says the sad thing is most of the leftist-run states are allowing them to break the law and in some cases encouraging it. Lesson learned, don't elect activists to run your state right or left. Here's a theory that I have, unfortunately. And my theory is that cities naturally tend to become socialist. Not that it's good, but they tend to trend that way. You know, even in Nebraska, which is a red state, when you look at the, precinct level voting, you see that population centers tend to be blue. And that's because, this is one of those times where I like to say to my viewers, I have more life experience than most people do. I've been in a number of different worlds. So I have the ability to kind of look at this with a perspective that not everybody gets. I think that cities tend to go blue because they don't require a generalized skill set in order to survive. Jeanette can certainly say if I'm totally wrong here, but when I've been out on the ranch, you have to do everything. You have to be to some extent a veterinarian. You have to be a mechanic. You have to do all kinds of different things just in order to survive. You must be able to do those things. Now, you'll get help from your neighbors, no question about that, and you have to help them in return. But you can't, like if something goes wrong with your tractor, you can't take it into a dealership and have it fixed. Dealership, where my family's ranch land is too far away to take it. You either fix it or you get a new one. And you could be fixing it for the next 20 years by yourself. My favorite anecdote, really, is when my grandfather passed away. We have a family cemetery out there that he was buried in. And it's way the hell out in the middle of nowhere. So to get a hole dug for him, one of my second cousins, I'm not sure exactly what he is, brought in a backhoe, dug the hole. And then me and 5 other of my male relatives lowered that body into the ground by ourselves, and then the guy with the backhoe covered it back over. You got to do that. You go to any city cemetery, and the body's there over that special stuff that they have over the thing. You go away for a while, and then you come back, and somehow magically the body's gone, and it's been covered over with dirt. Well, you get to do all yourself out there. If the fence breaks, you fix it. If your cattle has some problem, you fix it, or they'll probably just die. So you have to have all of these various skill sets just to live. Then you get into a city, and like me, I was in IT for 40 years, right? I don't know much of anything about doing mechanic work. I can do some basic stuff on my car, but not very much. Get past a certain point, and it's take it into the garage. I don't have to worry about where my water is coming from. I don't think it's true necessarily now, but when I was visiting all the time out there at the ranch, our water came from a cistern that is a big hole in the ground, a big concrete thing in the ground, and rainwater runs off of buildings onto it. That's where you got your drinking water, because the water that came out of the ground from the wells was so full of rust that if you drank it, you would get diarrhea. And in fact, one time I went out and I caught a big old catfish, put it into a container with nothing but that stuff in it, that water in it. The catfish eventually suffocated because all of this iron got into its gills. So if you don't know how to get your own water, you die. If you can't deal with 2 feet of snow in the wintertime, you die. You get bit by a rattlesnake, you either take care of it yourself or you die. And, you must be able to do all of these things. You get into town, and all of a sudden you're a specialist. Well, when you're an individualist, you want to vote for the guy. When you have a generalist who is doing all of their own stuff themselves, you want to vote for the guy in the party that is going to support your ability to keep doing those things and survive on that level. When you become a specialist, you tend to vote more socialist because you are dependent on this very large web of people and things in order to survive. So it tends to become more socialist because of that. Problem is that most of our major population centers are now very socialist. And what we're seeing now in terms of the violence and stuff, that is part of the result. I detest Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because she does not understand that the things that she wants to do, like the Green New Deal that she's got, when you look at what that is, that would cut agricultural productivity in the U.S. by at least 50%, if not more. And at that point, it's a question of which billion people do you want to starve first, and do you volunteer to be among them? And she's too stupid to know that that's what will happen. If you crush that individualistic way of life in rural areas, huge populations will die, and that is the reality of life. But you get those two types of different votes because of what how one set is reliant completely on themselves, and the other set is reliant on a whole bunch of other people in that city. Let's see. Jeanette says, I'm on point. Thank you very much. Your husband got paid in pork meat last week. Absolutely. Yeah, that happens from time to time. Yeah. Super 63 says, are they having people like Hollywood actors paying their bail? Oh, yeah, because Trump's preservatives are getting paid off scot-free with no bail at all. Or in some cases, district attorneys are just letting them loose. Just turning them loose. And collecting rainwater is illegal in some places in the U.S. I don't think it's illegal anywhere here. In the city, I wouldn't want to try it. Nebraska's weird. It's a natural prairie everywhere. But in cities like Lincoln and Omaha, you find a lot of foliage. And that's because nobody wants to sit down at home in the middle of the hot sun. So they all planted trees. And so if you were going to try to collect rainwater off of these buildings, it would have been filtered through God knows what to get there. Just not only just the atmosphere, and there's not a lot of pollution in Lincoln, Nebraska, but it's different than, air out in the middle of, nowhere. So I'm not sure I'd want to, given that I have good water coming out of the tap. But yeah, you absolutely, I suppose there's some places where it's illegal. I don't know why. Fat chance trying to, enforce that law, Drop of Truth says it's illegal to capture water in a dam on your own property in Montana. I guess I wouldn't know that, so yeah. Unless you're Ted Turner, of course. I don't know for sure. I don't know. I haven't ever been out to Montana for any length of time, so I couldn't tell you one way or the other what's legal or not out there. All I know is that for the longest time, they had no federally mandated speed limit. And, that was so much fun getting across Montana. You could go any speed that you wanted. And here in Nebraska, I-80 is 75. However, having driven it the last few times, and it's 6 lanes, 3 on either side. But having driven it now, it really should be 4 lanes on either side, because there's too much trade traffic going through there. I think it's either Los Angeles or San Francisco. Maybe it's probably San Francisco. But I-80 connects the West Coast with the East Coast all the way across. And so particularly after you get out of Chicago, I've driven it a million times, I know. You get out of Chicago and I-80 turns into a really packed, dense thoroughfare all the way at least through western Nebraska, all the way down to Colorado. It turns off in Nebraska, but at least down to there, it turns into a huge thoroughfare. Iowa is just plain scary. I-80 in Iowa is just plain frightening because it's only 4 lanes, 2 on either side. And you get this enormous amount of traffic coming out of and going to Chicago. And it's just densely packed. The speed limit's 70, but it's 75, effectively, because everybody's doing that. And you don't dare be any slower, otherwise you will die. It's like being on a free. It is like being on a freeway in Chicagoland. As I say, you can't go any slower than the rest of the traffic. It's terrifying, and it's only 4 lanes. What's real fun is when it gets to be wintertime, and if you have any significant precipitation, because it creates a lot of ice. And I will never forget coming into Des Moines one time, and it wasn't icy until you hit Des Moines. And then you hit Des Moines, and you had all these cars in the ditch. And I saw them and slowed down. But what was happening was people would come screaming into the Des Moines area at 75 miles an hour, hit glare ice, and go straight off, whoosh, 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 whoosh. One time I remember on the way from Des Moines to Chicagoland for a Christmas with my kids, I remember counting 27, I think, in the vicinity, around 27. None was more than 25 and less than 30 cars in the ditch. And they were all at cities, because you'd run into this glare ice that didn't exist on the rest of the interstate, hit the glare ice, whoosh, straight off into the ditch, both sides at 75 miles an hour. It was just terrifying. Tannemal says, I know it was illegal to trap salmon in Idaho unless you're on a reservation. There was a big political blow-up in the 1990s about, yeah, I don't know. Jeanette says, it must not be on I-80 when I would not call it packed or busy. Maybe it's just the times that I've been on there, but from Lincoln out to, I don't remember exactly where it turns off. Maybe you remember, and heads down, becomes another interstate and heads down to Denver. But my sister one time, she had car trouble. It was probably exacerbated because it was like around one of the holidays. My sister had car trouble, had to stop in, I don't remember what town. It may have been like, I don't remember. It was way out west, just before you hit turning off to because she came up from Colorado. It was just before you went to turn off from Colorado, and she's had to stop there. I had to drive all the way out there and get her, and that was white knuckle, just white knuckle. I couldn't believe it. 6 lanes of traffic, all jam-packed, and you didn't dare go below about 80 miles an hour because the traffic was just jammed there. So, let's see. Drop 2 says in Miami Shores Village, it's Florida. It's illegal to have vegetable gardens. You get into cities and you get some weird ass laws. People decide that it's going to make the property values go down because you've got, I don't know why, just stupid stuff. As I say, cities, if you look at just at the level of the precinct level, you can tell's the tale. Cities go blue. Even a red state like Lincoln, like in Nebraska, Lincoln is fairly blue. It's not totally blue, but on precinct level, it's getting there. Omaha, almost all blue. And nobody seems to have gotten this, but maybe a few people. Like I figured it out. The reason that Barack Obama won his elections and the reason that Hillary lost was because Hillary lost the suburbs. If you look at the precinct level maps, what you find is that the suburbs voted for Obama and they did not vote for Hillary. Sort of tells you something. They thought that she was too wackadoodle, and they didn't vote for her. But that's what happened is they lost the suburbs. This time around, I'm pretty sure that the suburbs will go red, and I think there's probably some cities that we never expected to go red. I mean, like Minneapolis, St. Paul. Like everything else, they tend to go kind of blue. And in their case, because it's so large, like many other places with a large city, it influences the state as a whole. And Illinois, right? Chicago is all blue. The rest of the state is red. But because Chicago's got this huge population density, it turns the state red. Minneapolis, St. Paul, the same thing. I think the citizens have figured out that they've been burned like crazy on this. And they may vote red for the first time in God knows how long. So we may see some cities that go red because of this. Portland and Seattle, I could certainly imagine them going red. Don't know. Guantanamo, Tucson has legalized people keeping chickens in towns, except the HOAs. Step in the right direction, yeah. I don't have any problem with it. It's just, as long as you keep them penned up so they're not going to go out and mess up my car if I drive by. So, been quite a long time since I've been to Tucson, and even then, very briefly. Went on a vacation to the Black Hills one time. Not Black Hills. I mean the Grand Canyon one time with my kid. Before my second kid was born, the other one was really little. And I think we passed through there. I'm pretty sure we didn't stay there. For some bizarre reason, the only other place that we stayed a night in, am I blanking on it, Flagstaff. And then we stayed a couple of nights, horrifically, in Phoenix in the middle of the summer. Oh, my God. How do people in Phoenix live there? How? Oh, man, that was horrifying. I thought it was hot here in Nebraska sometimes, but, I sure as hell ain't retiring out there. That was horrifying. Yes, Jeanette says, people in cities should not make decisions for those out of town. It's one of the reasons that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Red Cortez, or any of the socialists who are in Washington, which is almost all of them, it's why they're dangerous, because they don't know how badly their policies impact everyone else. Let me see if I've got it. I think I do. I just don't know if I've got my sound on it or not. This is Journalist v. Grand Bahar, Dakota. I have a pic I put up from time to time to show something, but I don't seem to have it. There are, in fact, at least in this country, a dozen different subcultures that are based along geographic and economic lines. You know, when you talk about the black culture, that doesn't really exist. Black culture does not exist. There are black people who live in cities. There are black people who live in the country. There are black people who live in these various dozen or so subcultures around the United States. And it's a bad idea for a federal government to make laws that cover all of these subcultures, because each of these subcultures has their own ways of life, their own economics, and their own way of doing things. And so, as Jeanette says, it's a bad idea to have people in cities making decisions for people in the country. You have to have something like my breadth of experience, where I've spent summers for years on a cattle ranch, so I have some conception about what it's like and what they need. But even then, I'm not going to pretend to understand that I know what the modern cattle rancher needs every day of the week. I can just say, hey, wait a minute, Red Cortez, your Green New Deal would destroy agriculture throughout the United States, and you're too freaking stupid to know why. And that would cause the death by starvation of 1 billion, 2 billion people in this world. And do you volunteer to be among them? But you can't tell her that. She's a know-it-all. She's once had it explained to me by somebody who was from New York City, who was teaching. He'd moved from New York City to Lincoln, was teaching at Lincoln, Nebraska. He was a professor in the English department. And he said that New Yorkers are really, really provincial. And I agree with them, very provincial. They can only see the world through a very urban lens, and so cannot understand what any of the rest of the world is like. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has a very limited life experience and has only seen the world from what she can see in terms of a very large metro area, and so doesn't understand that it is a small area in terms of geography, and the rest of the world doesn't work with those laws. It just won't work with those laws. It's impossible. Our Tanamo Flagstaff is beautiful. Yep, Phoenix sucks. Yeah. About 50 plus kilometers from where you live, Drop2 says many of the houses have large rainwater tanks. Yeah, a cistern If they didn't, they'd have no water. Yeah, and that was how it was at the time. Now they've got water that comes in from town. They've run water out, like at the cabin that we have. Water runs out there, and so you can get decent enough running water. But when I was growing up, you didn't dare drink the water. At least not. You drank it in an emergency, but only then. Otherwise, you went out to the cistern and got it. Yes, Artenimal, government is most effective at the lowest level possible. Yes, if you must have government, no bigger than a county, really. It shouldn't really be any bigger than a county. Constitutionally, nothing that the federal government does now is constitutional. It just isn't. They make all kinds of laws that, by any sane reading of that document, at least 99.99999999999999999999999999999% 9% of what the federal government does is flatly unconstitutional, but we let them grow. And now there's probably no getting it back, because the people we send there are power-mad sociopathic narcissists, and they will never willingly give up their power. And the only reason that I'm not voting libertarian this time around is because the left, the woke, have become too dangerous. They are people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and they are far, far too dangerous and should never be allowed to come to power. And that is the only reason that I'm voting for Trump. I do not like him particularly. I think he's done some things that are good. Some are bad. He was doing good with the economy until COVID went and killed it. And there's lots of things I would have done differently as a libertarian. But I can't vote my conscience this time around, because I cannot allow a split vote to allow the woke to come to power. They can never be allowed to come to power. That simply can't happen. The Democrats this time have gone way, way too far off to the left and cannot be allowed to come to power. And that's why I've got to vote for Trump, whether I like it or not. Well, I'll tell you what. It's been about an hour and a half for me. It's starting to warm up down here in a way that I don't like. I'm starting to get very hot. So I think I might take off. I certainly thank all of my viewers. I love having my viewers on. Certainly do like, sub, hit the notification bell. Tell all of your friends, family, neighbors, pets, and livestock to do the same. I can use all the views and eyes I can get. I got 12 concurrent right now, which is pretty high for me. Wish I had a hell of a lot more to say, but I'm too busy sitting here and free associating. Just one long look at the... Okay, see you later, Rabbitooth. Have fun. I'll see you next week. Just looking here at what's going on around the world. The police somewhere, I can't tell where, ground local news, Robert somebody or other on Facebook. Looks like things are generally under control. Don't expect it to remain that way. As I said in my prepared remarks, they think we've got Civil War II underway. So, I guess that's all that I have to say about that. Certainly love to keep the conversation going, so please leave your comments, questions, and nasty remarks, and I'll do my best to respond to you. So thanks for watching. It's all the time that we've got tonight on this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.